Okay. All right. Well, Marlo, first of all, um, Marlo is based in Mandan, but he is in Vegas talking to us today. And I'm going to ask him to tell us a little bit about himself. We know that he's involved with technology and the Tech Ranch and also the National Day Calendar. That's probably how most of us know him, but he can tell a little bit more, introduce himself. Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. So Jill, I appreciate the invite, and I appreciate being here with you today. I apologize. I had some travel challenges this morning, so I just took the closest coffee shop that I knew in the area, and there's a little noise in the background, but I guess we'll just have to deal with it, right? So, as Jill said, my name is Marlo Anderson. I'm the founder of National Day Calendar, the founder of Zuvio, of oh my goodness, I must have 10 different companies I've either founded or have in the progress of startup right now. So I guess I kind of keep myself busy in that realm. I like to create things. Most of it's tech-based, although this latest one called Ace Putt, we're reimagining how to play miniature golf. We just launched our first event last Saturday, and that was a lot of fun. We had about 400 people show up in Bismarck to try out our new version of miniature golf. So always creating things. I like to do that type of thing, usually based around that technology platform. And I like to build things on top of other things. So, and that's really what technology is all about, right? I mean, people build like our devices, right? Our smart devices. And I always think about this thing and how it disrupted the telephone industry in a very significant way. And less than 100,000 hours ago, I talk a lot in hours, by the way, this wasn't even a thing. That's amazing when you think about that, right? And in less than 100,000 hours, we have 2 million apps. So, I always think about how you can layer things on top of each other to create bigger, better things. And, with AI coming out right now and all this stuff, we just have all these things that are so amazing that, so yeah, anyway, that's a little bit about me. I could go on and on and on. Obviously, I'm passionate about technology. I've been the poster child for autonomous vehicles for many years in this country as well. I've ridden in close to 50 different types of autonomous vehicles in the last decade as well. So I'm a big advocate for that technology too. So, all right, enough of that, Jill.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, and the chat room will be open anytime for anybody who has any questions, and then we'll have a question and answer at the end. But I have some questions I'm going to be asking Marlo to get us started. And you mentioned you started as a technology entrepreneur, which led to other enterprises, including the National Day Calendar. But communication has always been a major part of what you do. So we're just wondering what has drawn you in that direction, and what have you seen the value of communication in developing an enterprise?
Yeah, I might blend communication and marketing a little bit as we talk today, because that's probably how I view things a little bit as well, because you're always kind of selling yourself, right? You're selling the project you're working on. You're selling yourself to your potential partner for life. I mean, you're always selling yourself, right? So communication is really important in that regard. So yeah, as I've built my enterprises, I've always understood that value. I'll talk a little bit about National Day Calendar. It was actually, and still is, a blog, by the way. It is a WordPress website, and it started as a WordPress website strictly because I wanted an easy platform to write on, and that was something that was at the time. I mean, even 11 years ago. It seems hard to believe it's only 11 years ago, but it's only 11 years ago since National Day Calendar first started, and it was blogging was kind of a thing at the time, and I was thinking about what topics I should blog about. A friend of mine was doing some blogging and was having some success. I loved some of these national days and just started to dig into them a little bit and found that there were a lot of them we weren't basically celebrating anymore. There was about like 30 or 40 of them at the time that were being celebrated. But immediately, because of the blogging platform, SEO kind of kicked in off of that. Google really likes that blog platform as well. And next thing you know, the media is picking up on what I'm doing, and the rest, as they say, is history, I guess. So it was it's interesting, but it's always been about, I guess one of the things that I don't worry about a whole lot, and I know a lot of people do, but I don't game SEO. I've always said that if you write content and you're consistent with content, or whether you're in video or audio, it's the consistency of things that pay off more than anything else. And if you have that going for you, you can. I don't think I consider myself a great journalist at all. I'm just very consistent in what I do poorly. So as a result, I've got a following. That's just how it is.
Mhm. When you started with radio. You did a lot with radio
I did.
even since then.
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah. And from there you had moved over to podcasts, but tell me about how radio has been a good medium for you and how podcasts fit into that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think I've been in radio a long time too, but both of those things with National Day and my radio career kind of took off at about the same time. That's just a little over 11 years ago too. We were talking before we started here about DeLax. When I graduated from DeLax, I had a scholarship to Brown in Minneapolis as going into broadcasting, and I gave that up. I had an aspiring career in restaurant management, which means I was the night manager at a fast food joint at the time. So I decided to not pursue that. It's always funny how life brings you back to maybe where your passions are, and that's kind of what happened. But yeah, I mean, I had a pretty decent run at some technology that I had developed, and a friend of mine who was in the industry asked me to maybe start a talk show based on technology, and that's kind of how that got started. Nervous as all get out the first time I did that. In fact, I remember the second time. He was kind of my board ops for a while. His name is Dean, and you can stop me anytime, Jill. I kind of tell a lot of stories, as you're starting to figure out here.
That's okay.
But the second time he was actually talking about the fact that some people might actually be listening to this in their cars, and I was visibly shaking in the studio. I mean, it was very nerve-wracking. But I enjoyed radio. I love the fact that you're having this kind of personal, intimate conversation with people. I think that's what makes talk radio so endearing. Is that people can turn it in, whether you're listening to, if we have aliens visiting us at 2:00 in the morning as you're driving down the interstate, or you're listening to some political banter or whatever you're listening to, you can usually find something that you like, and it feels like they're having a conversation with you, and that's what I really liked about radio.
How is it as a communication tool? Are there some tips you would give people if they wanted to use radio as a communication tool?
Yeah, I mean, radio's interesting right now, right? I mean, COVID decimated radio. I mean, I would remember going out to the studios over COVID, and people didn't know if they were going to have a job the next day. So, technology is certainly taking its role, but I think that's kind of settled down a little bit now. And I think radio's a good place to be. I do think that if you're going to get into radio, they're going to want to see something. And I think a podcast now, it used to be the other way around. If you had a radio show, you were going to podcasting, right? Now it's like you have to have a podcast, and then maybe you can make the transition to radio. And I see a lot of that going on. So that's probably what I would do. The thing I've always liked about radio, Jill, is the one-to-many scenario. The thing with podcasting that it's just kind of this crapshoot type of thing where maybe you get popular. I've been very fortunate in that regard, but there are not a lot of people that even come close to the kind of following that I have, in podcasting. So radio gives you that opportunity. You can be on the airwaves, and at any given time you might have 100 people. If you're in a bigger market, you might have a few thousand or tens of thousands of people listening to you. And that to me is the big thing. It's a one-to-many platform that can, deliver that message that you're interested in delivering.
When you were using radio, I mean, it's one station and they have their people who listen into those stations. How does someone pick a station if they're interested in being on radio? How do you know which one is the best one for you?
Yeah, so I mean, you have to look at the genre and see what they're doing. I mean, there's a lot of conservative talk out there right now, so that would be one area that if you're interested in doing that. There doesn't seem to be so much on the other side. There's a few programs on the liberal side. And then beyond that, it's about your passions. So if you're if you're into fixing cars, for example, maybe you have a lot of knowledge in your head about fixing cars or
Thank you for stopping
remodeling,
to Taco Bell. What can I get going for you?
those
Could I
type of
get
things.
the, we'll do the Cantina Chicken Crispy Taco Meal with the Diet Mountain
The
Dew.
crispy taco one?
Yeah,
Okay, what's the drink?
Oh my God.
Are they buying for everybody? Is that the deal? This is funny. I love it. I love it. So yeah, that's how I think I would take a look and see. You just want to listen to it, and you want to get along with the people who run the station as well. So maybe you have to have some alignment with their beliefs, and if you have that, it's a great way to get started.
Mhm. What was it like transitioning to podcast? Was that pretty seamless or was that pretty challenging?
It's a little challenging. Probably the biggest thing is that if you're taking a radio format, which is chopped up and has these bumpers on both sides of your content, you're always come back for the, as we'll continue our conversation after the break, right? You got to actually edit that stuff out. And if you're thinking about you're doing a podcast, you almost have to pick up like where you left off. Like if you ended at a sentence, you just kind of got to hang it there and then just start back up on the other side and then kind of mend it all together, because you don't want your podcast to sound like a radio show. And that's kind of the challenge of it. Unless you're going to insert advertisements, or ads into those spots, which some people do. They'll add some mid-rolls into those spots and make it feel more radio-esque, and it gives them an opportunity to monetize their podcast. But yeah, the editing is probably the biggest thing, and you have to really be thinking, if you're doing radio, that and if you're having a continuing conversation, that the person that's listening to a podcast is not used to having it just will start up after the break type of thing. They're out jogging or they're out working in the garage or whatever. They're not going to put up with that. So editing is a big deal here.
Mhm. Was your content, your information pretty much the same, whether it was radio or podcast?
Yeah, I would say that I don't change that up a whole lot. I mean, I think about what would be what my online audience and what my radio audience would like to listen to. And until right now, Jill, I never really thought about that. And I should probably think about that a little bit, because my radio audience might be a little different than my online audience. And there might be some times where I would want to have different content for them. The thing I like, in fact, it's not even like, the thing I love about podcasting is that there is no time constraint. Radio, right? The breakdown right now is 12 minutes, 9 minutes, 15 minutes, and 8 minutes and 50 seconds. This is for a 3-hour program. That's what I have to go through for every hour, because there's commercials, there's news breaks, there's weather breaks, all this other stuff, right? So you got to fit these things into that time. When it's a podcast, it can be truly conversational, and that's why I think podcasting is so popular right now.
Mhm. Which gives you more feedback from your audience?
Well, it's certainly podcasting. I mean, I hear on radio is like if I'm walking down the street and somebody sees me, they'll come up and they'll say, "I really love that story that you talked about last week," or whatever. But podcasters or people who listen to podcasts will send you feedback. Like, you have to accidentally bump into people in order to get that feedback a lot of times on radio. Podcasting is not that way at all. They'll thumbs up you, they'll thumbs down you, they'll do all of this stuff. So you get a pretty good feeling right away if they agree with you or not. And it's okay a lot of times if they don't agree with you. It's all about engaging the audience. And if you can get them riled up, especially in the political banter a little bit, I don't do politics, but I see how people can get people riled up very easily in that space.
Mhm. Are you moving more toward visual media now?
So, the older, the fatter, the balder I am, it seems like the more they want me on television now. So I haven't quite figured that out yet, but that's kind of what's going on. So yes, I'm doing a lot more video. I do a lot of television. I have a 1-minute piece that I do daily for National Day Calendar. I guess I've always been doing a lot of stuff on the tech side. I'll do interviews that get pushed out. You might see me on the CBS Sunday Night News, or not Sunday Night News, but the CBS Evening News. You'll see a little tech piece that I do occasionally for them. So you just never know, I guess, on the video side. But yeah, I'm doing more and more video all the time. And there's no doubt at all that online video is king. And people need to really think about that. And so Todd Cochran is a really good friend of mine. He owns Blueberry Network. And Todd, by the way, is the grandfather of podcasting. He's the first person who ever got paid for a podcast. And he still has that company that all these years, 20 some years later, he's still, but he founded Blueberry. And we talk about this a lot. And he's adding a video podcasting feature now as well. I mean, YouTube, of course, is going in that direction. A lot of them are going in this direction of video as well. So I do believe that video podcasting is the next big thing.
What was your entry into using video? How did it come about?
Yeah, it was good question. I'm thinking back. I mean, it really was. It was probably CES. And this is probably about 20 years ago. So CES is the Consumer Electronics Show. It's a once-a-year event. It's the world's largest electronics technology trade show, and it's held in Las Vegas. And I've been covering that now for CES for over 20 years. And that really was the first time that I really stepped in front of a camera on a very regular basis. But those are basically for little pieces. Now, I mean, it's interesting how it has evolved and just doing more and more of it all the time. And, like the National Day Minute, and this is a good story here I'm trying to think about what people could, what everybody here could maybe use. So that was an idea that I had, and I went to the local station and talk to them about this potential to do a 1-minute daily feature around national days, the thing I'm passionate about, right? So I went and visited with them a little bit about that. I explained to them that they could actually monetize around this, and they were like, well, that seemed to get a few ears. Before nobody listened to me. If you bring money to the table, then they usually are very interested. And there's a lot of pay for play out there now. A lot of these lifestyle shows you see in the morning or wherever are actually, they might feel like they're not a pay for play, but those segments that you're watching, those companies are paying to be on those segments and things. I'm not a big fan of that. I can see why they do that. But National Day Calendar is not a pay for play. I mean, we actually are we try to tell stories around that. And I think news outlets, these morning talk shows, whatever, are very interested in those type of things. If you could come up with maybe not a daily thing, but you could have, I'm just throwing ideas out here, if you're a sports person, you like to go fishing, for example, you could have the wilderness weekend update or something like that, and that would run every Friday for 2 minutes. And that way you're not into this having to do this every day like I do. It's something that you could think about, and people would watch it then thinking about, what they could do in the wilderness that weekend, or it could be a day road trip. What can you do as a weekend warrior type of thing, that you can get out on the road and do these trips around the state. I think Cliff Naylor had that for a long time, and that was a really good segment too. So those are the type of things that I think TV stations are very interested in. And then, of course, if you do that, that transitions very easy then to digital.
Mhm. How do you sell yourself to, you mentioned just approaching a TV station with an idea. Do some of these ideas work out for you, some not so much? How do you know what they might be interested in?
Well, in my case, every success before it had 99 failures. So you just have to be even in this space, trying ideas and is about consistency as well. So if you're consistent about your messaging, and if you're really passionate about maybe doing these weekend road trip type of things, and you want to do this television piece based on that, if you get shot down the first time, don't worry about it. Just go to the next station, or tweak the idea a little bit. You come back, and if they say no, maybe you can get a reason why they're saying no to it. If you come back and you have, a company that would sponsor you, for example, they'll be much more open to listening to you at that point. And if you have a following too, that's the other thing nowadays. They'll look at like your social media following. If you have a couple thousand people in the Minot area, for example, that are following what you're doing for your weekend getaways, for example, that would be something that they would look at pretty strong, I think. So I think that online piece really lends well to moving to traditional media.
How do you get into the national markets?
So that's a lot of work. In my case, it was and still is pretty much station by station. And I don't know, whether you loved him or hated him, Rush Limbaugh was the person that I've actually modeled our way of getting into stations, because he basically just went to each station and visited with them. I've done the same thing. I would say of the 200 and some stations that air my daily show across the country, I've probably been in 150 of those stations. And once you visit with them and they get a feeling for you, it's about relationship building more than anything else. You can get lucky nowadays. I mean, you certainly can. If you have a Nexstar or Town Square or whatever, they might pick you up a little larger, but most of these stations make their own individual decisions when it comes to this type of programming. So it's a challenge sometimes.
Mhm. And I suppose they're looking at costs too. Is this going to cost us anything, or will it pay off for us?
There's a lot of cost to that, but if you start doing, you just have to look at how you monetize, on every station. That's what I did. I look at, is every station, I'm just giving you my formula, right? Is every station worth $10 a day to me in advertising revenue? Okay, so I'm just giving you a very basic number. If that's the case, then it's worth $3,500 a year for me to sign up that one station. So if it costs me $2,000 to go there and get that station, yeah, it might be a break even the first year or so. But now I have that almost nobody leaves once they have the programming. So that's the wonderful thing about what we do.
Mhm. And you're also working with something now called Destination Celebration, which has different media pieces to it. But that sounds real interesting. So talk about that.
So Destination Celebration, and I was kind of leading into that. That's actually the radio show that's on a few hundred stations across the country right now. It's a 2.5-minute daily radio short. I have a co-host, her name is LaToya Johnson, and we tell a couple of short stories around the national days, like this National Grape Day. We might talk about the different things that you can do with grapes. If it's National Take a Hike Day, for example, we might tell some story about some amazing adventure that happened around a hike. So it's very similar to Paul Harvey's Rest of the Story, if you remember that. That's actually our inspiration to this show. So we're doing that, and then we're also doing, in addition to that, we're now filming a television show that will, I want to say we're going to be on the History Channel, but we have other channels that are very interested in us as well. So we didn't quite sign the dotted line yet for the History Channel, but that's in my heart, that's where it belongs. So it'll be a half-hour weekly show where we go around the country. And if you go to Destination Celebration Show right now, we actually have 13 mini shows. These are like 6 to 7 minutes long. And they feature a lot of businesses and events and things. A lot of them are in North Dakota. We use some of the people that we know. There's some footage from Vegas and LA and Tokyo. So I guess we've been around a little bit with the show already. And when it goes to air this fall, it'll be actually 2 national days into 1.5 hour. So we'll have that transition from Noodle Day to Bobblehead Day, for example.
So there's some storytelling, it sounds like, with this project.
It truly, Jill, all of it is. Everything is about storytelling. And I mean, literally, when you go back to that communication thing, people want to know the stories, right? You can tell them, I mean, I have a cup of coffee here, and I could tell you that this is an amazing cup of coffee, but did you know that Teddy Roosevelt is the person that coined the frame, "It's good to the last drop"? And he did that at Maxwell House Hotel. And that's how that whole brand got started. And now this cup of coffee is a lot more interesting because you know those facts, right? That's the stories. That's the communication piece that you really want to get to.
Mm-hmm. How do you find these community stories? How do you tell them in engaging ways?
So that's interesting. I think we do a pretty good job with writing. I'm a big believer in using the tools that we have. I find AI fascinating for this. And I won't say that we use AI to write our stories, but we do use AI to do some research for us and to come up with story ideas. It's all about how you prompt artificial intelligence to help you. And a lot of times, and now we have a whole chat window based on our show, so it understands what we're looking for at any given time. And I'll just prompt it, and we'll just pick on National Coffee Day, and I'll just type in there, I'm looking for 10 interesting stories about coffee, and then it'll just give me 10 really quick ideas about interesting stories around coffee, like a cup of Joe. I'm just using this as an example. A cup of Joe was coined because it was the Secretary of Defense back in World War I took away alcohol off the Navy boats and gave them coffee instead. So they used a cup of Joe. A cup of Joe was actually a sarcastic way to kind of like, it wasn't a nice saying back in the day, I'll put it that way. But these are the things that it comes up with. So then you see those, and then you can say, oh, this is interesting. Tell me more about a cup of Joe. And then you can write your story from there. So when you have, and I know some of you are in the newspaper business or news business, it's tough. It's tough to come up when you have a daily grind, and I have many of them now. It's tough to be creative and interesting all the time. And writer's block is a real deal. I mean, it really is. There's nothing more refreshing to me than to sit down and not be able to come up with any ideas and then drop something into AI, and all of a sudden I have a brand new idea I can work off of, and it's very refreshing to me, and I use the tool.
Mm-hmm. I do want to remind everyone, if your mic isn't muted, it should be, but if it's not, please mute it. with the understanding of, we know that Marlo's in a coffee shop and there's a lot of
Yes.
background noise and we're dealing with that. I wanted you to talk also about the video tools that you use, because there's a lot of people are interested in them, but what's the easiest to use? What's the cheapest to use? How did you go about finding the tools that you use?
So your basic tools, if you're going to be using your phone, for example, I mean, there's all kinds of tools, apps that you can use on your phone. Adobe makes some great products, and they're getting better all the time, even in the phone space. So they're great. I have another one called Descript. It's DESCRIPT. This tool is amazing because up until Descript, the only way you could basically edit video was by going in, you'd open up the frames. I don't mean to be, you know what I mean? And then you'd find that spot where maybe Marlo said, or so, and I want that out of there, right? Well, Descript actually transcribes the text that's in the video. And then you can go in and let's say I use a lot of filler words. I have some crutch words that I use, like just saying. I just discovered this the other day. My editor is like, he actually brought a swear jar into my studio and had just saying on it. He said, every time you say that, you got to put $5 in this thing. It was $80 after that session. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So anyway, but you have these word crutches that we get into or whatever. You can actually put that in there and it'll search those out and delete them. So anything that's a word, you can just go in and delete that word and the video disappears with it. It has made the editing process, especially with filler words and spaces and all this stuff. Oh my goodness, what I just described to you in like a 30-minute or an hour video could take hours to edit out. Now I can do it in 30 seconds. It's incredible. So I would highly recommend Descript. You can do the same thing with audio as well. And the other thing with Descript is you can train it in your voice. So it creates an AI voice of you. You basically have your own avatar in there. And my editor, a lot of times, like right now, I mean, for me I filmed or recorded a bunch of stuff yesterday before I left. I may have mispronounced something or whatever, and they pick up on it. And then they'll actually pull from my AI voice now and drop that in there instead. And it's almost indistinguishable now. So that's another nice little tool. And it takes about 10 to 15 minutes to train it. And then and once it's trained, it takes about a day to process it. But once you have it, you have it. And it's very, very good. So big fan of Descript.
And when you take words out, it's still, when you watch it, there's no gaps. It's all.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it kind of all depends. You may have to do the transitions a little bit or whatever, but you'd have to do those anyway, right? If you're going to still take that filler word out or that whole sentence out or whatever that you're going to take out, you'd still have to be able to do the transition. And so basically the process that we do now, Jill, is we go and it gets dropped into Descript. We fix all the filler words. We take out all the spaces or all the empty air, and then we take it from there, and then we'll drop it into our audio editing tool or video editing tool like an Adobe or whatever, and then go from there. Speaking of which, there's one other tool that maybe for the audio side that a lot of people might not know about. And I would highly recommend people type in audio or, oh my goodness, Adobe Podcast. Are you familiar with this? It's incredible. It is incredible. I'm in a noisy coffee shop right now. If I wanted to create a voiceover for something, and a lot of the people that are probably listening to probably would have this scenario occasionally. You don't have a high-end mic sitting around. You don't have this, I got this little lavalier on right now that's wireless to my computer. Not everybody has the stuff that I travel with, right? So you have this. So you could record into your device whatever you want to do, and then go to Adobe Podcast and it'll listen to it. It'll remove all the background noise and make it sound like you just recorded that in a studio. Oh, I forgot to tell you, it's free. It's an incredible tool. And it has what I carry with me now is significantly less as far as microphones and things go, because I know I have that tool that anytime if I have a bad recording of something that I need to get out, I can just drop it in Adobe Podcast. And they don't call it Adobe Podcast. I forget the actual name of it, but if you type that in, that's what I always search it. And then it'll take you to that. You just have to sign in using your Google or Apple platform, and that's it. And then you upload it, and within just a few seconds, you'll have a cleaned up, professional sounding, ready for radio audio piece. It's incredible.
Mhm. Do those tools allow you to use things like your phone or technology that's maybe not quite as high end, a little less expensive to use because you've got ways to touch it up?
Yes, exactly right. I mean, a person can travel. I mean, I travel with a microphone. I was actually setting that up before I decided just to put my lavalier on. But it can make your gadget bag. Maybe you don't even need to have a gadget bag. You know, with the ability, your phone. I mean, my goodness, the quality of the sensors on your phone now. It's hard. It's hard for me to even understand how it can be that good. You know, I'm out the other night watching the Northern Lights north of Mandan, and there was a time that, like with an SLR camera with film, not that long ago, that you really had to work hard to take a picture of the moon. And to get the stars, are you serious? I mean, you had to open that shutter up forever, right? The fact that you can point your camera at the sky at night and take pictures of stars, are you kidding me? I mean, the quality of what we have in our hands nowadays is way above what we had to spend so much time with before. So it's really easy to take video with your phone. The one thing I would actually, if you're thinking of video though, one piece of equipment I would carry with yourself is a gimbal. These are about $100 to $150. They're basically a fancy selfie stick. And what they do is they stabilize the video. So the gimbal will always keep it nice and smooth. The more expensive videos actually have follow me features in there. So if you're talking in front of a room, for example, it'll follow you as you go back and forth, pacing or working with the audience or whatever. Very, very cool stuff. And you can, and even in this scenario, if I would have set that up, I could have set my gimbal up a little further away than my webcam on my computer. And this would probably look a lot better than you looking up inside my nostrils right now. So there's a lot of things that you can do that are much better. And that's a pretty inexpensive piece of equipment to carry with you and easy to carry with you.
Mhm. I'm going to move on to another topic and talk about branding the National Day calendar and how you went about doing that and making it a go-to source for that kind of information.
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty fortunate. I mean, I had a little bit of a following on the tech side already, so I kind of leveraged that a little bit. But probably the biggest thing I did right away, there's two things. So the first thing was I would tag reporters, whoever I could find in towns that I wanted them to pick us up. So I would go and I'd look at Minot, North Dakota, and who's at, and you have to forgive me. I used to live there, but KCJB comes to mind. There's is it Sunny FM now? I think they carry our program up there actually. And so yeah, you can listen to, you know, if you don't get enough of me today, you can always go to Sunny FM in the mornings and listen to me some more if you like. Anyway, so I would tag them in social media, especially on Twitter, now X. I would tag them, and after a while, you know, and it's not so much that I'm asking them to reach out or to repost it or whatever, but what happens is that they start to see you as the authority in that space, right? So if you're, you know, a car repair person, right? And you fix something, you put a video up, and then you just tag that reporter in town that you are wanting to maybe do a story on what you do in the future or whatever. And you just keep doing that. Don't worry about the fact that they're not responding to you. Don't even care about it. Sometime in the future, they're going to reach out because all of a sudden there's a recall on tires from BF Goodrich. And they're thinking to themselves, "Oh, that's right. I know that person who's the mechanic. Let's have that person weigh in on that." And all of a sudden, you've just jumped from here to here. And that's what I did, I think, very successfully in the early days of National Day Calendar. I just pounded that, and these people I just became the authoritative source for national days because of that.
How does social media play into your communication? How does that work for you?
Yeah, it's so I hate social media, just so you know that. I know that National Day Calendar is the biggest trending topic of all time, so it's hard for me, or it's probably hard for you to understand that. I never started National Day Calendar to be a trending topic. It was just a blog that I started because I was passionate about it. But I understand why people like to share. We're getting way more active about social media. As the world is changing, AI is changing a lot of things. Google is coming out with, I forget the name of it, they just announced it yesterday. So within the next week, they're coming out with this it's not generative AI, they're calling informational AI, something like that. So search as we know it is coming to an end. Just so you know that. I mean, so if they can provide the information to you in an AI format. So for example, if somebody types in what day is National Peanut Butter Day on, now National Day Calendar would be at the top of that, and people would click on to go to our website. Moving forward, Google will have an AI that puts on there that October 18th is National Peanut Butter Day and blah blah blah. So they're going to have a lot of challenges. There's going to be a significant drop off in advertising revenue because of that. And I'm getting into another whole nother topic here. But the reason I'm bringing that up is that social media will become an even bigger factor now to get to your audience. Because if Google's going to take away your ability to have search engine, to be optimized in a way to appear in the top 3, 4, 8 of a search engine type of thing, social media is going to be one of the only ways that you can get your message out. So you have to think about what that looks like moving forward. And again, I mean, there's so many choices. You have to kind of look at what, just like you're asking me about what radio station earlier, you have to look at who follows what different types of social media. Facebook is king. It's been there for a long time. Everybody talks about Facebook going away. That is not the case. It's still the biggest of all time. And it will be for quite some time yet, I think. Of course, there are competitors. I mean, TikTok is big in the space. It's going to do a lot of video, and obviously Facebook is changing because Reels and Instagram and all these things, they all understand this and they're all catching up to TikTok now. But so social media is strong. The thing with social media is you have to be consistent. And if you're going to do it, make sure you're in it and be consistent in it. Meaning that, like for National Day Calendar, it was a 1-a-day thing. I had to post every day, right? And that consistency built the following. So the same is true with anything that you do. If you post occasionally, you're not going to get a following. You have to, and you can post occasionally, but have that Friday at 2 p.m. be your consistent post. So if you're doing movie reviews, for example, and you go out on Thursday nights when they all premiere, you get out there, you write your premiere, you get it out at 2 o'clock on Friday. You can make all the comments you want the rest of the week, but everybody starts to rely on that 2 p.m. Friday consistent post of yours. And that's what will build your following.
how do you manage the social media, just the feedback and monitoring it to see what kind of responses you're getting?
So that's a big, big ask for us. I mean, National Day Calendar has a huge problem with trying to keep up with all the responses we have coming in all the time. We don't have enough people to handle it, quite frankly, but we do automate a lot of stuff, and that helps a lot. We have, as far as the posting side goes, just some great tools. One of them is CoSchedule, which is a North Dakota company. They have a great tool. So it's called CoSchedule. And at one time, it was kind of funny, you know, they deemed themselves as the fastest growing startup in North Dakota. I guess we were probably in that realm as well. And we were both calendar companies, which I thought was kind of a funny thing. But yeah, I would use them or a Hootsuite, any of those. There's other things out there too. So Hootsuite's HOOTSUITE. There's a few others that are out there that are like that. So it's a one-to-many thing again. So you can create a post and then it'll send it to X and it'll send it to Facebook and it'll send it to LinkedIn or wherever you want it to go, right? So it really can save a lot of time. So some of those actually have management tools for comments as well. So you don't have to go in to Facebook and then Instagram and then TikTok and all this stuff. It actually collects all that data, brings it into the platform, and then you can answer back right from there. And that's very, very helpful for managing multiple accounts.
Mm-hmm. And we were getting down to our last couple of questions. So I wanted to remind our participants, if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat and we'll get to them as quick as we can. And I wanted to ask what else you're into these days that we might not have talked about.
So before we get to that, there is one piece of advice I can give you too. I'm not a big fan of squatting on domains. I think it's not a great business practice, but please go squat on your business name when the newest social media comes up, because there's nothing more frustrating that when you're ready to move to TikTok and National Day Calendar is already taken. So as soon as something comes out, just go get it. Even though you're not doing anything with it, do it whatever the absolute minimum is just to keep the name. And then if you're ready to do something in the future, then you have your name. You don't have to come up with some fancy little thing, you know. And I'm just sharing off because like that, Facebook is National Day Calendar for us. Twitter is National Day Cal. Instagram is Nap Day Cal, because people took our name because we got popular. And then when we moved to them, it was gone already. So just throwing that at you. So I have I invented artificial photosynthesis with NASA, and we are working on that project right now. It's called Carbon Convert. And basically what this does is it uses sunshine and CO2. So we're going to pull CO2 like from a coal-powered plant and out of the stack, right? And then it'll actually come across a nanofilm that is activated by sunlight, and that breaks apart the CO2. I won't get too technical here. And then from that, we can make propane, methane, jet fuel, whatever, all through the power of the sun. And this is something that I proposed to NASA a couple of years ago. They actually invented it, and then we have the license for that right now. It's called Carbon Convert. And we're just building the first prototype outside of the laboratory as we speak. So pretty excited about that. Have an app. Everybody in this room is going to love this app. It's called TapNote. And TapNote, it's very close to being done. I have it on my phone, and TapNote will revolutionize the way you take notes. Got the idea. I was sitting in a keynote a couple of years ago, and a good friend of mine who's a note taker was driving me nuts, just driving me nuts. What that person, because people would be clapping about what the keynote said, you know, and he's like, what did he say? What did he say? And I was like, Dave, you got to stop asking me all the time. Just listen, right? Anyway, after it was over with, I'm like, man, oh man, we both miss so much. How cool would it be if you could just tap your screen every time the person who was talking said something that you wanted to remember later? So that's what TapNote does. It actually records what's going on around you, whether it's a conversation, a keynote, a professor, if you're a reporter taking notes from somebody you're interviewing, whatever it is. And as soon as that person says something you want to remember, you tap it and it highlights the previous 15 seconds. So then if you want to listen back to it later, it'll at the end of it, you save it, compiles everything, it transcribes it. It shows you the highlights, just like if you were to highlight it in a book or whatever, you have those highlights. You can drop that highlighted stuff into like ChatGPT, ask it to give me the actionables for the meeting I was just at, and it'll just create it for you from that. If you want to listen to those again, you can just go back and listen to them again, but just to that piece. So if it was an hour talk and there's 4 minutes of things you need to listen to, it's very easy to listen to it. So that's very close to being done. I expect we'll be beta testing that in the next 4 to 6 weeks. So if anybody's listening that wants to be a beta tester of that, let me know. I'd love to put you on that list and you guys can try it out. And then I have another project called Ace Putt. We've reimagined miniature golf, and aceputt.com. You can just go right to it, take a look at it. It's really different. It's all about making holes in ones. Nothing else matters. So you get 3 balls instead of 1. On number 3, 2, and 1, you put the 3 ball down first. You try to make a hole in 1 with that. Then you put the 2 ball down and the 1 ball down, and then it's the high score that wins. If you put the 3 ball in, you actually get 3 points for that. If you knock it in with the 1 ball, it's like marbles in a way. You get those points as well. I won't get into all the details, but that's about ready to launch as well. We had our first beta of that last Saturday. The main question, we had a feedback on there. One of the questions was, if Ace Putt was offered as your miniature golf course, would you play more miniature golf? Of the almost 100 respondents, 77% said they would play more miniature golf if they had Ace Putt as an option. So we're very excited about Ace Putt as well. And we're hoping the app will be done also in another 4 to 6 weeks. That's the other thing with Ace Putt, is that there's going to be an app to score with, and you'll be able to talk into it. And you can just say, add player Jill, and Jill will show up. Jill's holes 2, score 2, boom, just like that. So it'll make the game of Ace Putt or of miniature golf much more exciting. So how's that for enough? That's enough, isn't it, Jill?
Yeah. So what are you haven't you started yet, but that's rolling around in your brain?
Wow. I have a couple things. I want to do roadkill bingo. It's a joke.
He's a master entrepreneur.
I'm probably going to go back.
Interesting.
I have another website I want to start called Listoric, and it's listicles. If you're familiar with the term listicles,
Yeah.
that you've seen them, like the top 8 reasons to visit North Dakota in the wintertime, right? Listoric is a website that'll be the top 7 flavors of ice cream that Thomas Jefferson invented, or the top 5 horses
really
that
good.
Benjamin Franklin rode, or whatever it was.
This guy's
Right?
really
It'll be lists about history, and I think that'll be a lot of fun to do.
Okay, great. We don't have any questions on the chat. Does anybody want to unmute and just jump in with a question? Did we answer all your questions? Comments?
I just droned on forever and bored everybody to death today.
I don't think so. I think we've about used up our hour though, so yeah, it was great. It was interesting. Yeah.
There we go.
Oh, what was the name of the audio tool? Ask.
So there's a couple of them. One is Descript, and that's the AI audio tool, and it also does video. So Descript, DESCRIPT. And then the other one, I don't remember what audio or what Adobe calls it, but just type in Adobe Podcast. And this is just a lot of fun to try. Take your phone, everybody, record something. Just record like a minute interview. Get your kids, do a little interview with somebody real quick and then upload it in there and find the noisiest place. Get in front of an air conditioner, get in front of a fan or you know, go outside of it next to the busy interstate or something and do this and then put it in Adobe Podcast. You will be stunned at how good it is when it comes back to you.
Do it pretty quickly. You get it back pretty quick.
Yeah, I would say, you know, I put a couple minute videos up there, or, you know, 2 or 3 minutes long, and I would say it takes about that long before they're done. So there's a little bit of processing time, but it's pretty quick.
Mhm.
Wow.
You're very welcome, Rebecca. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, if we have no more questions and no more comments, then I guess we just want to thank Marlo for doing this, for taking his time out of his, when he could be doing who knows what in Vegas.
Well, you know, I actually have a pretty easy day today, so I'm just gonna huddle down on the coffee shop here and get some work done. But I really appreciate it, Jill. Thanks for the invite. And if anybody has any questions, you can, if you want, you can share my email address. I'm a little slow sometimes at getting back to emails. Usually give me a week or two. Although I'm getting better, telling you, I have more and more people involved in my email process now too. But when you get a few thousand emails a day, it's tough to keep up with that. But feel free to reach out and I will answer questions the best I can, or help, or have coffee in your community. I love going out for coffee and talking about ideas, so it's always good.
Okay, well, very good. And thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
everyone who attended.